What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Charlie Savage, and today I just want to preface this video of my top 100 games list by telling you a few things about it. The first thing is that I started this top 100 games list quite a while ago. I started the series on June 1st, 2021 and ended it on August 19th, 2022, so there's quite a wide array. And as this goes, I of course bought a better microphone, I bought a better camera, did all the fun, YouTuber and streamer stuff that you do, and you get better as it goes. So just keep that in mind when you're watching this. Also, this is my list from that time period as well. So my opinions have changed a little bit. There are tons of great games that I left off of it that I've, made, shorts about since. But I just want you to let you guys know that it's not a perfect list. It's just a bunch of games that I like that I really wanted to talk about. And I really hope you guys all enjoy. What's up, everyone? Starting now, I'm going to be doing my top 100 games list on TikTok and YouTube Shorts. And we'll keep the series going on a consistent basis. The things to keep in mind for this series are this. Number 1, these are my personal favorite games, not what I'd consider the best. That list would be very different and would involve such things as innovation, game success, overall impact, use of technology, and comparing it to what was out at the time. 2, this is basically a list of games that I played and just how much I like them. I will consider some things based on technology, like obviously Mario 64 cameras could have been better, but probably not with that N64 controller. Number 3, I haven't played every game, so if there's a game you think needs to be on the list or a game you want to recommend, let me know and I'll try and play it. Number 4, surprisingly, there were some games I had to cut off the list that I would have loved to include. That being said, let's get into it. Coming in at number 100 is the classic pack-and Wii title from 2006, Wii Sports. Chances are, if you're watching this, you've played this game, especially if you can remember when the Wii was the hottest consumer product on the entire planet. If you don't remember what that was like back then, this game was one of the biggest reasons that anyone wanted to play the Wii. Motion control was new, exciting, got everyone from me at the age of 7 to grandparents all across the world to play baseball, bowling, boxing, golf, and tennis in their living rooms. Hell, you would even go out to a bar and they'd have a Nintendo Wii set up. Eventually, they even gave this stuff to people recovering from injuries, even making therapy fun. This was the key. This game ended up being more fun than its respective sports because it was way less effort, but when you're 7 that's great because children are terrible at sports. But in reality, what keeps this game entertaining is the Nintendo charm, seeing your customized Miis throughout the game, and the fun times you have with your friends. Just making the cut for this list at spot number 99 is Radical Entertainment's classic The Simpsons Hit and Run. This game is an indirect sequel to The Simpsons Road Rage, which for all intents and purposes is a clone of Crazy Taxi. Well, at least according to Sega's lawyers. The team at Radical sought to differentiate the title by taking some incidental and accidental influence from GTA 3's design. This came by way of letting the players out of their cars. And this was the perfect move. The game received critical acclaim and became a classic for the 7th generation of gaming consoles. What makes this game so special is how well it realizes the Simpsons' very own Springfield as a setting, filled with landmarks, references, gags, and general care for the franchise. This wouldn't have been nearly as compelling if it was only in-car gameplay. Being able to go into Moe's and others' various locales makes the world feel accurate to the show. The game has a great variety of maps, vehicles, and playable characters, and the gameplay here is as hectic as any episode in the franchise, and it's absolutely sublime. At spot number 98 is the cult classic from Heavy Iron Studios, SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom. Battle for Bikini Bottom is a 7th generation console 3D collectathon platformer that is, of course, about SpongeBob. In the game, you get to play as SpongeBob, Patrick, and Sandy as they collect items across various iconic locations to stop Plankton's evil robots as they've gotten out of control. Now, it's your job to save the world by collecting items such as golden spatulas and dirty socks, everywhere from jellyfish fields to your neighbor's dreams to the deep and dense kelp forests. What makes this game so good is surprisingly stellar map design, the exceptional platforming mechanics, the general progression throughout. Everything from continually added mechanics to an excellent difficulty curve are here. It rivals some of the genre's best, all while being a licensed game, which is commendable, especially in 2003 where many didn't turn out so well. Although the voice acting is terrible in this game.
SpongeBob, this flapping robot crisis is making the Krusty Krab lose money like a sinking ship.
The first game that was released as a digital exclusive game has made the list, and it's Ubisoft Montreal's Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon at the number 97 spot. I still remember playing this game for the first time and just trying to comprehend how ridiculous and absolutely absurd this game is. For those of you that are unaware, Blood Dragon is a strange and nonsensical spin-off of Far Cry 3, which was a critically acclaimed first-person shooter, open-world, and sandbox game. Blood Dragon has almost nothing to do with it in the slightest outside of running in the same game engine and reusing a myriad of assets. Blood Dragon takes place in a dystopian version of 2007 that is based on a very 80s pseudo-cyberpunk aesthetic. In many ways, it's an over-the-top 80s action movie filled with explosions and neon colors. The player controls a cybernetic super soldier named Sergeant Rex Powercold, who must save the world from a madman trying to bring back the dinosaurs, or well, blood dragons in this world post-nuclear state. In short, get the girl, kill the bad guy, and save the world. Coming at the inverse of the comedic number is Pinocchio Games' Party Hard. Party Hard is a game about a serial killer who attends parties just to kill people. Why? Because he wants to have some peace and quiet. The story develops into a murder mystery between police investigators that were following the case. While the story is certainly commendable, that's not the most important part. What really makes this game stand out is its gameplay, game design, general theme, and execution of those concepts. This game works in really limited bounds, as it is a top-down, retro-inspired game. While a game like Hotline Miami is a fast-paced and an intense murder spree, this game is a slow and meticulous bout, and it just absolutely kills it. You can't be seen killing partygoers, nor can anyone see the bodies, or else the authorities will be alerted and called in. There are a plethora of ways that you can kill and set up traps for the partygoers to bring an end to their unfortunate night. If that sounds up your alley, be sure to check out Party Hard. Taking the number 95 spot on my list is Beanox's 2019 release, Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. This game is a remake of Crash Team Racing on the PlayStation 1, however this game has a lot more characters, tracks from the Nitro Kart games, and plenty of DLC and costumes. You can tell the developers really took a lot of time and really care about the Crash Bandicoot IP. The game keeps the item system from the PlayStation 1 game as well in this remake. Speaking of which, I love how useful the Wumpa Fruit are in this game. Instead of the coins making you go slightly faster like they do in Mario Kart, here the Wumpa Fruit power up your weapons. What was once a potion that makes someone spin out is now an entire nightmare sequence, slowing you down after you spin out. Additionally, the game has a fantastic boosting system and very tight controls. Overall, Crash Team Racing Nitro Kart is a fun and exciting kart racer with lots of charm. Taking the number 94 spot on my list is Techland's 2013 release, Call of War as Gunslinger. Call of War as Gunslinger is an arcade-inspired first-person shooter that takes place in the Old West. The story starts out at the end of the Old West in 1910 in Abilene, Kansas, where a man says he'll tell you tales of the Old West in exchange for some drinks. While these tales may seem ridiculous, the characters pointed out, it's fantastic. Additionally, that all plays into the spectacular narrative and surprising conclusion of the game. The game tells tales of legendary gunslingers like Billy the Kid, Jesse James, Butch Cassidy, and the Sunset Kid. When it comes to gameplay, this is one of the best first-person shooters I've ever played. The controls are nice and tight. The game has a comic book-inspired cel-shaded art style. The voice acting and story are impeccable. My biggest gripe with the game is that it's short and the duels are a little difficult, especially near the end on consoles. But if you're looking for a fun and short first-person shooter experience that is replayable, be sure to check out Call of War as Gunslinger. Coming in at number 93 is one of the most underrated fighting games that I've ever played, Skullgirls Second Encore. It's a fast and fun tag team fighting game. The game is mechanically deep, but feels quick and loose, so learning the game doesn't feel quite like a chore. Once you get your bearings, the game becomes incredibly fun. I'm not a fighting game expert per se, there's a lot I really don't know. But I can say that the game controls are so fluid. The cast of characters is diverse enough to suit multiple playstyles without burdening the roster with characters that are a hassle to fight. Of course, some of the matchups are favored, but with the options that the game provides, it feels that anyone can make a team and win if they're good enough. Additionally, you have the option to play with 1 to 3 fighters, which is nice because it allows you to use who you're comfortable with. It's also impossible to talk about this game without mentioning how beautiful the art is, and secondly, how fantastic the soundtrack is. It's one of my favorite video game soundtracks, and I really recommend everyone taking a listen to it. If you're looking to just pick up a fighting game for fun, I can't recommend Skullgirls Second Encore enough. Coming in at number 92 is Sledgehammer Games' 2014 release Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. This game has received mixed reception from just about everyone, but personally, if you're talking about the jumping mechanics in the shooter, this beats out all the other ones that I've played. Advanced Warfare had guns unlike any other Call of Duty, movement unlike any other Call of Duty, and maps that were elevated versions of the classic 3-lane design. I'm still baffled about how poor the reception for this game was, but it's still one of the best online multiplayer experiences I've ever had. However, a lot of other parts fell flat for me, especially the story, which felt like a very subpar action movie. When talking about the campaign, the only memorable parts are the press F to pay respects meme, and the fact that Kevin Spacey was in it while people cared about him. Unfortunately, online multiplayer for older Call of Duties aren't so active, so it's not easy to revisit the title and have the same positive experience that I had back in the day. Rounding out the bottom 10 of the top 100 is Queasy Games' 2012 release, Sound Shapes. Yes, that's the name of the game, and no, I'm not having a stroke. Sound Shapes is a 2D side-scrolling platformer where your movement choices affect the music of the game itself. While it may seem like a strange concept, it is executed incredibly well. It is one of the most unique gameplay experiences I've ever had the pleasure of enjoying. The game has about 20 extensive levels and an additional death mode, which is harder platforming challenges based on each level. This plus the game's DLC means there's plenty of content for someone to enjoy, especially if you love trophies, as the game has separate trophy lists on PS3, PS4, and PS Vita. The game also features compositions by Beck and Deadmau5. That being said, I highly recommend Sound Shapes, and everyone should play it. Taking the number 90 spot is that game company's 2012 release, Journey. Journey is a 3D, Journey is like life. Journey is like life itself, taking you through the trials and tribulations. There are amazing moments of great beauty, moments of intensity and danger, fantastical highs, and an amazing score. You play the traveler, there to experience everything across the journey. The game has 3 modes of gameplay, which involve running, sliding, and leaping. It's very straightforward. This is a game that you look at and say video games are art. The game is almost indescribable as much as it is a knack for creating emotion as an experience. It's not a game for everyone, that much is certain, but it's a game for a sizable portion of people, and it's been able to bring some of its players to tears. Journey is a special game, and if you're fine with spending a couple hours and a few dollars to take a shot and see what awaits you, then go for it. I can't recommend it enough. Coming in at the number 89 spot is the first arcade game of the list, Super Street Fighter II Championship Edition. This is the one. This is Street Fighter in itself to a lot of people, and that's for such a good reason. This is the definitive version of the type of Street Fighter that was seen in arcades across the world that dominated the conversation and built the understanding of fighting games and the influence of them. The gameplay is as perfect as an arcade game can be. The sticks on the machines and the buttons are laid out perfectly and are easy to understand, but the game in many ways, like an onion, has layers. But these secret tricks or special moves would become a staple in fighting games and become a lot of what people remember about them. Just like Hadouken, Shoryuken, Sonic Boom, Yoga Flame. This is a lot of what people remember. It gives the game character, it gives it identity, and that's why people love it. Taking the number 88 slot is DICE's Star Wars Battlefront 2. While this title may have been cast into a sea of controversy since launch, it's definitely worth picking up. Is it a crazy good competitive shooter? No, not at all. But it's a great game that's just kind of fun to mess around in. It's the best looking Star Wars game by far and away, and having battles on such large scales feels awesome. I love the variety of troops, and honestly, I think it shines through the best in the Clone Wars era. It's awesome to see different infantry units and classes. I love seeing heavies, ARC troopers, and commando squads square off against B-1 battle droids, droidicas, super battle droids, and assassin droids. Overall, this is a great and enjoyable game that honestly feels like you're letting your imagination roam free in Star Wars, just thinking about the epic scales and battles that we only get a taste of in the movies. Number 87 on this list is the last game that Zipper Interactive ever made, Unit 13. This is a third-person cover-based shooter made for the PlayStation Vita, and the design is perfectly based around that. Every mission is bite-sized, so it takes 5 to 20 minutes. It's made perfect for riding any transit line, small breaks throughout the day, or just a game to switch on really long trips. It's one of the best shooters I've ever played on a portable system, and certainly one of the best looking, as it could easily be mistaken for a PlayStation 3 title. The controls are nice and tight, as the shooting feels accurate, even on the Vita, and hitting headshots just feels so satisfying. The game plays well, but looks to be one of those games that will be lost in time, but it was definitely an enjoyable experience and a fine addition to the Vita's library. Racing to the number 86 spot is the most underrated racing game I've ever played, Jak X Combat Racing. I'm so excited to talk about this game because it's a game that I don't think gets anywhere near enough praise. Jak X is a superb combat racing game developed by Naughty Dog at the tail end of the PlayStation 2 lifecycle. This game is straight up what Twisted Metal wishes it could have been. It's a fast-paced racing game with guns, missiles, mines, turrets, grenades, drones, smoke, oil slicks, and even a nuke. The game controls incredibly well and is filled to the brim with different game modes, characters, and a killer mid-2000s rock soundtrack. Core gameplay loop is by killing your opponents, you build up Dark Eco, take out enough racers, and deliver enough damage, your weapons upgrade, and you can go faster. You have this as long as you don't die, which is always the challenge in a death race. This game is surprisingly on PlayStation 4 and still on PS2, so if you have a chance, definitely go play it right away. Trust me. Sneaking onto the list at the number 85 spot is the black sheep of the Sly Cooper series, Sanzaru Games' Sly Cooper Thieves in Time. While ostensibly being the 4th game in the series, the community is incredibly mixed on the game, as it's quite different from its predecessors. For better or for worse, the game has an updated art style that makes it look less like a comic book and more like a modern day cartoon. Quite frankly, I think a lot of the classic gameplay is there, and it's improved in a lot of ways. However, the writing is nowhere near as good. The map design is adequate, but not too memorable when compared to the games that came before it. It's awesome traveling in time to go meet Sly's ancestors, but it's still such a noticeable gimmick, even when it's hinted at the end of Sly 3. Also, none of Sly's ancestors feel quite as suave or interesting as Sly, and Sly himself is also rewritten to be more family friendly and less of a sarcastic smartass, which I really loved about that character. Also, Murray is nothing like himself anymore. It's like they got Teen Titans Go in a lot of ways, but I'm honestly happy this game exists, and it's still a fun game to play through. Hopping on to the 84th spot on the list is Ubisoft's 2011 release, Rayman Origins. If you haven't played this or Legends, I highly suggest you do so soon. It's a wonderful, more scaled-back title in comparison to most games that Ubisoft publishes. It's one of the best 2D platformers in the past decade, and it looks absolutely stunning running in the UbiArt engine. The level design is made perfectly for the gameplay, and they all have a fantastic flow and feeling to them. Rayman 3 on the PlayStation 2 was my introduction to the Rayman series, and I loved it. While this game is much different since it's a 2D platformer, my initial expectations were surpassed, and I was surprised. And not to mention, the soundtrack on this game is amazing. This is one of the safest game recommendations I can make, and I strongly encourage everyone to try it if you're looking for a good 2D platformer. Coming in at the number 83 spot is Insomniac Games' 2013 release Ratchet & Clank Into the Nexus. This game was a return to the form for the series following All for One and Full Frontal Assault. It's a precursor to the latest Ratchet & Clank game Rift Apart, as it does toy with interdimensional play, as well as it motivates our antagonists, but it's much less involved. Instead, it's an excuse for new and unique enemies, and it builds on the previous Ratchet & Clank games mechanically. The game is shorter and serves as a proper epilogue for the future series. It was initially released at a $40 price point, and it's well worth the asking price. It's by no means the best Ratchet & Clank game, but it's certainly an overlooked one that flies under the radar. I can't recommend the game enough. Taking the 82 spot is Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. The game follows an epic and saddening adventurous tale of two brothers who have been tasked with doing everything they can to save their dying father. The game has dark tones and mature themes that it handles incredibly well. What's great about this game is that it tells you nothing straight away and instead opts to do more showing than telling. The characters talk, sure, but in a language that's made up and you're not supposed to understand. Instead, you glean from their behaviors and their interactions. As for the gameplay, it's a puzzle platformer, and each brother is controlled with the other half of the controller. While it's jarring when you first control them simultaneously, it becomes second nature after so long. It's a fun game, but it's an amazing experience. Traversing the beautiful world, learning its secrets and lies makes a big impact in what was an unforgettable experience. Jumping and shooting its way into the 81st spot is Mega Man 10. Surprisingly, it's the first Mega Man game I played, and I really do enjoy it. Does it have Sheepman? Of course it does. Did it come out on PS3 and Xbox 360? It sure did. I know a lot of Mega Man purists prefer 2 and 3, and for good reason, but I played through Mega Man 10 with no issues, and it was a great entry point. Did I need to know what happened in the previous 9 Mega Man games? No, I didn't, not at all. Across all games, Mega Man mostly plays the same, and the map design here is as good as any others in the series, although it's less challenging, which was great for it being my first time. In fact, I've beat the game with no continues and only using the Mega Buster. Overall, it's a great 2D platformer and one of the best Mega Man games to start with because of that lower difficulty. I highly recommend it to anyone who likes 2D platformers. Coming up the flagpole and onto the list at number 80 spot is Nintendo's 2013 release Super Mario 3D World. This game is designed really well, however it sits in this weird crossroads of not being a traditional 3D Mario game like Mario 64 and Galaxy, but it feels more like a 3D version of a 2D Mario game like World or New Super Mario Bros. That being said, it does take some things from the nearly decade-old New Super Mario Bros. Series by letting people play with their friends, and instead of 2 Toads, you get to play as Peach. Each character is inspired by their appearance in Super Mario Bros. 2. So Mario is normal, Luigi jumps a bit higher, Toad is faster, and Peach can float. The game is filled to the brim with the joys of the Mushroom Kingdom, whether that's 3D platforming, the music, it's all there. The game is a complete package. Overall, while this isn't the best 3D Mario experience, it's a really fun game, especially with friends, and I definitely recommend it. Spelunking its way onto the list is Mosmouth's 2012 release Spelunky. Spelunky is a roguelike 2D platformer. The goal of the game is simple: make it to the end and defeat the boss at the end. You must traverse 4 worlds with multiple levels, all of which are procedurally generated and have different themes. First, there's caves, then jungle caves, then ice caves, and sometimes ice caves with aliens. And after that, an ancient temple which precedes the fittingly epic final boss, Olmec. The caves are dangerous, full of enemies, traps, and just all around hazardous conditions. Additionally, the game is full of fun little secrets, items, and even a secret level. While this game can be frustrating, taking the time to master it and play through it on co-op with friends is a rewarding experience, and it's a game that I will love and I'll never forget. Coming in at 78 is Sucker Punch's spin-off game Infamous First Light. The game follows Fetch, a character that was seen in Infamous Second Son. Fetch is a much more interesting character than Delsin, and fleshing out her backstory in the smaller, shorter title was a great decision. She has neon powers which allow her to move fast, run up walls, and even shoot. The game features a full story that takes a look at Fetch's past, the DUP, and the game's antagonist, Augustine. The game also features these arena challenges which are tons of fun and are the hardest part about platinuming the game, but they're so fun, so if you do enjoy the combat system, you will absolutely love this creative decision. If you're even somewhat interested in Infamous, this is a great jumping in point at a really low price point that I definitely recommend. Finding a spot on this list, the number 77 spot, is Guerrilla Games' 2017 release Horizon Zero Dawn. The game follows our protagonist Aloy, who is forsaken by her tribe in this post-apocalyptic future where society has regressed but man's technological creations still roam the land. The game is a wonderful open 3D action-adventure game that's full of quests, missions, gear to collect, and giant robot dinosaurs to hunt. This game was fun, however my biggest critique lies in the traversal as it gets tiring running around everywhere, and even just on the back of animals. However, it's still a game that I recommend to most people, especially if they like 3D open world games, Western RPGs, and shooters. Also, giant robot dinosaurs. Howdy folks, moseying its way onto the list is Rockstar Games' 2018 release Red Dead Redemption 2. There isn't much that I can say about this game that hasn't already been said. With a stunning open world that's diverse in its environments, gameplay that's enjoyable, and epic set pieces, all in combination with masterful storytelling and superb acting all around. So you're probably wondering, why is this game so low on the list if you feel that way? And the truth is, the game probably is a 10 out of 10, but it's just not my favorite experience. As to why, it's because it's a game with tons of stuff to do, but very little is required. I finished the main story, and honestly, I didn't care to play much more afterwards. It didn't leave me wanting more. Usually that's my sign for a good game. Besides, I usually just end up playing poker anyways.
Hey! Now that's what I'm talking about.
Finding its way onto the list at spot number 75 is Sony Ben's 2011 PlayStation Vita release, Uncharted Golden Abyss. Uncharted Golden Abyss, while having to show off needless features of the Vita, is still an amazing title. It's exactly what you would expect from an Uncharted title. The difference is that it's on an amazing handheld instead of a console. Anyways, it's tons of fun. The story once again follows our hero Nathan Drake as he is sent on a quest to Central America to find an ancient city that I cannot pronounce. Really, it's more about graphics and gameplay here. It was a launch title on the PlayStation Vita and it was a technical showcase for the system, but I honestly hope it gets ported to PS5 in the future because it's such a fun and fantastic experience. It's really a shame that not everyone got to experience it. That being said, if you can get your hands on a Vita, this is definitely one of the best games I'd recommend for it. Wandering onto the 74th spot on my top 100 list is Fallout 4. While it is by no means a perfect game or even the best Fallout, it feels more modern than the two titles before it, and it gives a fun and interesting world to explore. I've been to Boston, in fact I've been there twice, and it's one of my favorite cities, mostly because it's filled with US history, and this game throws that right in your face with the Minutemen. Going to see post-apocalyptic versions of places I've been to definitely helped, but I still enjoy the combat, the world, the side quests within, even if the main questline is subpar. But I can't lie, I had a ton of fun in this game, and I definitely recommend it, especially if you're looking for a game that you want to sink a lot of time into. Coming in at the number 73 spot is Volition's 2008 release, Saints Row 2. Saints Row 2 proves that even if a game looks like it's a generation behind, that if you focus on the actual selling point of the game, you can make it work. And what is this selling point? This is exactly when Saints Row realized that it had to be a little over the top, just a little more ridiculous, just to keep things going. They differentiate themselves fantastically here. Every single aspect of the game is over the top. There are missions with zombies, there are missions where you drive a septic truck and spray people with shit. Even the main plotline has you fighting a gang that uses katanas, only to later end up fighting a security firm. In short, this game is all about being ridiculous, and it pulls it off tremendously well. This game may be a little bit painful for some people to go back to, but if you did put up with the old Grand Theft Autos prior to 5, you'll definitely enjoy this. Shooting its way onto the list, the number 72 spot is Call of Duty World at War. For me, this is my first proper introduction to Call of Duty. To this day, this game in every aspect has been an unforgettable experience, everything from the opening scene on the Japanese island to the grand finale of planting the Soviet flag atop of Reichstag. As for going back to play the game now, I still recommend it. The game of course focuses on the Allies' perspective, but what stands out is how different these two stories are from each other, particularly the various ways that the Japanese use guerrilla warfare tactics. This is implemented into the gameplay and it does a tremendous job of subverting your expectations of the normal run and gun formula. However, on the Soviet front, the focus is more on increased brutality and the vengeance of the Soviets that showed the German army. As you go through, you realize the Red Army grows tired and disgusted of the Nazis and their atrocities. That being said, if you like Call of Duty and you have not played, please go give this game a try. Even if this isn't up your alley, this was my introduction, and it's enough to keep me interested to at least look at Call of Duty every year, even if I don't buy it. Skating into the number 71 spot on the list is Tony Hawk's Underground 2. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater is one of the best sports games, especially one of the best non-simulator sports games. Tony Hawk's Underground searched to tell a narrative that was over the top and ridiculous. However, its sequel didn't back down, but instead doubled down by taking a world destruction tour for two team captains, the friendly and brand safe Tony Hawk against the world-class jackass himself, Bam Margera. This game is very much a product of the time, but it's such a gem. The gameplay of course further improves upon the previous iterations with fantastic locales from all across the world. If you somehow haven't played this game and you're looking for a ridiculous, goofy, and immature experience with fantastic gameplay, this game is exactly that, and I can't recommend it enough. Finding its way onto the list at the number 70 spot is Square Enix's Octopath Traveler. Octopath Traveler is one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen. If you like the art style of old school SNES JRPGs like Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger, then you will love this game. It has an active turn-based combat. The game's combat focuses on finding weaknesses with certain weapons. For example, an enemy may be weak to blades, like a dagger, whereas another may be weak to something like fire. It does a fantastic job of retaining the 16-bit sprite work, but bringing it into the style of what is possible in modern game development. It looks beautiful, it applies the art style to a 3D world, and it has amazing shaders. The game centers on 8 characters with their own and unique tales from various fantasy backgrounds, and you explore their past and present adventures. While their tales don't come together in all too satisfying a way, I will say that this game could easily be a precursor to something way better down the line. But if you are anyway interested in anything I said, please do yourself a favor and check out this game immediately. Fighting its way to the sweet spot on the list is Sega's Yakuza Kiwami at number 69. This is the third time I've talked about this game, but there's a good reason for that. Yakuza Kiwami is a fantastic game that focuses on its open world and combat. The open world takes place in one neighborhood in Tokyo and has an emphasis on filling the world with stuff to do rather than its size. You get familiar with the area and it's great. You can go play pool, get into fights, do karaoke, anything else you want to do, the world is your oyster. The story is very much overdramatic as well as incredibly over the top and silly. If you're looking for something lighthearted and action-packed that you can just sink a lot of time into, or just have a lot of fun with, I can't recommend Yakuza Kiwami enough. Additionally, if you want a full review, it's up over on my YouTube channel on youtube.com/SavageGame. Beating its way onto the list at the number 68 spot is Devolver Digital's Hotline Miami. For the uninitiated, Hotline Miami is a fast-paced top-down rushdown shooter / beat-em-up. The game is in the 16-bit pixelated art style that takes place in 1980s Miami. That's right, just like Vice City. So the game is absolutely loaded with drugs, mostly cocaine and tons of murder, and a wonderfully stylized soundtrack, which was done by Moon. Well, mostly by Moon. Anyways, it fits the game perfectly. If you haven't played this game and you're looking for something fun and fast-paced, this game is definitely for you. I highly recommend it. Climbing its way onto the list of the number 67 spot is Assassin's Creed 3. While I understand this is very much not liked nearly as well as the other Assassin's Creed games, however, it was my first one, so it's a little special to me, so I put it on the list. In fact, when this game came out, it's all I played for months at a time, and I was absolutely enamored by it, because up until that point, I hadn't really played too many open world games, let alone a game set in the American Revolution. Normally, I like to leave a recommendation, but this is a perfect example of the Ubisoft formula from that era, but play it if you're interested. It's certainly not for everyone, but I definitely enjoyed myself, and I could easily imagine that others do as well. It's also been remastered, so go check that out. Powering its way onto the list of the number 66 spot is Sucker Punch's 2014 release Infamous Second Son. Once again, this game is looked down upon by fans of the series, but it's more so for the story. It's a fantastically fun game where you play as the protagonist Delsin Rowe, who can take the powers from other people and use them. Like the other Infamous games, your karma is a way in which you choose to play good or bad. I don't want to spoil it, but with 2 endings, neither of them feel entirely satisfying. The gameplay is simply sublime though, and I beat the game twice within the week that it came out just to get the platinum. That certainly counts for something, as we all know that gameplay is king. If you've never played this game and you have a PS4 or a PS5, definitely go get it. You can usually find it for pretty cheap nowadays, and the game definitely still holds up, and I'd recommend it. Jumping its way onto the list of the 65 spot is Nintendo's 2011 title Super Mario 3D Land. While many others may prefer 3D World, I have to say this game feels perfect for portable systems like the 3DS. It feels like a gauntlet of great levels, all of which use the 3DS's 3D feature incredibly well. It's the perfect halfway between making a traditional 2D Mario platformer, but in 3D. There are a myriad of concepts here that make the jump from 2D to 3D, and it has all the traditional variety of levels that you would expect in a Mario game. The game even features unique puzzles that make use of the perspectives that work wonderfully in the actual 3D mode that the system has. Everything about this game just feels right, and it's a blast. If you have an opportunity to play this game, please do. It's so fun. Fighting its way onto the list of the number 64 spot is Arc System's 2017 release Dragon Ball FighterZ. I'm gonna be honest, I've never even watched Dragon Ball once in my life, but this game is sick. The game has an absolutely beautiful art style, the intense and hype gameplay that you would expect from a series like Dragon Ball, and the game is surprisingly easy to get into, especially when you find your bearing compared to other fighting games. If you want to get into fighting games and haven't done so already, Dragon Ball FighterZ is the perfect place to start. Even when playing with my friend who never plays fighting games, after about half an hour of gameplay, all of our matches were starting to get closer and closer, and we were trading sets and everything. It was fantastic. Coming in at the 63rd spot is a bona fide Nintendo classic, Mario Kart Wii. Releasing in 2008 and selling over 37 million copies since, Mario Kart Wii was a lot of people's first Mario Kart. Even though Mario Kart 8 is a better game in my opinion, there's something about this game that I just love. The track selection, the added trick mechanic, the implementation of motion controls were all fantastic additions at the time. I mean, you couldn't go to a house for a year without finding one of those Wiimote wheels just lying around. Even up until college, I witnessed people playing Mario Kart Wii despite Mario Kart 8 and 8 Deluxe being popular. The game is definitely worth going back to today if you haven't done so already, and it's just such a fantastic title that I think everyone should play. Coming onto the list of the number 62 spot is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I get it guys, I'm a Melee player and I love talking smack on it, but you can't deny the quality of this game even if it's not my preference in terms of gameplay, and even if the online isn't great. The game is just a love letter to Nintendo, to Smash, and to gaming as a whole. And that's something worth appreciating. Now that Sora is released and it's hard to imagine Smash going anywhere further than it already is, Lord knows that Sakurai has earned his break, that much is certain. So congrats to Sakurai and the team at Sora Studios. This is a fantastic game, everyone should at least play it once, and it's definitely better than a lot of past iterations. My only gripe with this game is just really its lack of single player content, because Brawl just kind of killed that, and that's something that I really wish they would have done with Ultimate, especially with this whole cast of characters. Coming in at the number 61 spot is my favorite puzzle platformer, Mike Bithel's Thomas Was Alone. Now this game manages to tell a wonderfully heartwarming and gripping tale with just one voice actor, jumping blocks, and some very creative design. The story starts off with Thomas, who was alone. He's just a red quadrangle that is on a journey to find himself, and he makes friends along the way. Each of them have different personalities, perceptions, abilities, and all of them are unique in all of these factors as well as their shape and appearance. The game is about discovering yourself, making friends with those around you, and going against your own insecurities. This is a basic game that should really be played by anyone that can play it, even those who don't play too many video games. It's designed very straightforward, very creatively, and everything about it is just fantastic, and I highly recommend it, even if it's not the flashiest thing in the world. Coming in at the number 60 spot is my favorite World War I game, Ubisoft's 2014 release, Valiant Hearts: The Great War. For a game that takes place in World War I, it doesn't have any real shooting or fighting mechanics, but instead focuses on human aspects of the war. You learn about these people, their heartbreak, their trauma, and their stories during the Great War. This game has a unique drawn art style, and it runs in Ubisoft's UbiArt engine. The game's tale is gripping and gives some great context to the war and the human cost of it all. It's a game that I can honestly recommend for almost anyone. It's a pretty easy puzzle game, and it's fantastic. The story is just so good. Please just drop whatever you're doing and just play this game. It's only a few hours long, and it's life-changing. Coming in at the 59th spot is Rocksteady Studios' 2009 release, Batman Arkham Asylum. It's an action-packed game filled to the brim with iconic Batman villains scattered throughout the infamous asylum, and littered with goons and henchmen for Batman to fight, as these villains have taken over, and it's up to you, Batman, to stop this villainous reign of terror. Throughout the game, there is an emphasis on a wonderful combat brawling system, in addition to puzzles using your utility belt, and it doubles down on the fact that Batman is the world's greatest detective as he solves this mystery. If you even have the slightest interest in Batman, even if you just saw the cartoon as a kid, or any of the movies or a show, and just remotely enjoy it, then I highly encourage you to take the time to play this game. It's entirely everything that a Batman game could or should be, and it's all the better for it. Coming in at the number 58 spot is Volition's 2011 release Saints Row III. It's a game with a penchant for the absurd. Everything about this game is over the top, and it's so much better for it. It's by no means one of the best games I've ever played, but it's certainly unforgettable. It's a hilarious and action-packed romp that never lets up, not even for a second. The world is fun to explore and full of stuff to do. No matter what happens, it's almost certain that you will enjoy your stay in Steelport, as you will certainly partake in everything from driving tanks to committing insurance fraud to fighting giant monstrous clones of naked European men and even entering a computer. If you haven't done so and you like open world games in the style of Grand Theft Auto, give Saints Row the Third a play. It's certainly a fun time. Taking the 57th spot on this list is Hangar 13's Mafia 3, the third game in the illustrious Mafia franchise. This game tells the story of Lincoln Clay, an African-American Vietnam vet, as he returns back home from following his service overseas in the Vietnam conflict. Coming back home to New Bordeaux, a city quite reminiscent of Louisiana's New Orleans, and as you could probably suspect, Lincoln gets involved with the mob, or in this case, lots of them. Additionally, this game does not shy away in the slightest from the harsh realities of its setting and those societal circumstances. You're a black man in the Deep South in the 1960s. The terrible things from that time and what you think people would do and say all happen in this game. When it comes to gameplay, it's your typical third-person open-world game. There are tons of cars, various weapons, and fun mechanics to help you take on all manner of challenges that the game has to offer. Overall, I recommend this game almost entirely for its intricate story, as its gameplay is satisfactory at best. Coming in at the number 56 spot is Season 1 of Telltale's The Walking Dead. If you're not familiar with it, it has nearly nothing to do with the TV show, but it does take place in the same universe, well, at least in terms of the outbreak and kind of zombies. And yes, I am aware that it was graphic novel first. What we do see in this game is Lee, a convicted criminal who is seemingly forced by in his own morality as a good and decent human being, into taking care of a little girl named Clementine, who is, for better or worse, left to die in this newfound zombie apocalypse. They very much develop somewhat of a found family dynamic. They both know that Lee isn't a father, but he's a guy doing his best to raise a girl in the absolute worst of circumstances. Throughout this journey, they take on some serious hardships, meet many people in this ever-changing world. You never know who you can trust, and that's one of the more interesting aspects about the game. This is once again a game that I recommend nearly everyone should play, even as someone who isn't into zombie-type games or click-and-point adventures. This is about people and their relationships, and that's something that I'll always enjoy in storytelling. Building its way onto the list at the 55 spot is an absolute classic title, and that is Traveler Tales' LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga. The game combines the childlike joy and wonder of LEGOs with my favorite fictional universe, Star Wars. The gameplay is simple but wonderful. Jump, attack, and use special abilities as all of your favorite characters from the Star Wars universe. The game consists of wonderfully reimagined versions of all 6 of the first movies, with 6 levels each, some in characters, some with starships. All the way from pod racing to fighting Palpatine, this game has such a wonderful variety in mission structure. But where the game really hits its stride is once you beat the level and unlock free play, you can take any character to any level and swap them at will. This provides nearly endless amounts of joy and allows you to play with toys like a child. I highly recommend this game. It's actually aged pretty well, and I still love it to this day. Coming in at the 54 spot is Bungie's 2014 release, Destiny. This is entirely something surprising for me, and probably something I may regret placing this high. That being said, this game has given me some of the most fun gaming experiences I've ever had. It's one of the few games where I had a dedicated group of people to play with, and there were always new things to find. Throughout high school, this was the game that me and my best friend damn near dragged me back into playing with him, his dad, his brother, his uncle, and 2 more of our friends. And as frustrating as the game could be, no matter how many objectively good points and critiques you can make about this game, its design and formula, I'm glad I spent all that time playing it and spending that time with my friend. The main reason it's getting a spot on here is because with all its DLC, it stood the test of time on the PS4, and it's one of the best games I associate with that console, and that general time period of my life, and I just really enjoyed it. Strumming its way onto the list at the number 53 spot is Neversoft's 2007 release Guitar Hero 3, Legends of Rock. This game is what many consider to be one of the best, if not the best Guitar Hero game. It was the peak of the franchise. This was the one that every person had. This game is the reason I can go into video game stores and bookstores and still find controllers made for this game. Its presentation was better than its predecessors. Its setlist was an incredible mix of rock music across multiple eras and subgenres, with fun customization options, and with iconic characters and guitars and levels. You couldn't go wrong spending your days playing this absolute classic title. I'd strongly recommend playing this game, but I can't imagine there are many people out there who haven't, to emphasize the cultural impact of this game. It made Foghat relevant in the mid-2000s. Foghat. No offense. Coming in at the 52nd spot is Team Asobi's and Sony Japan's Astro's Playroom. This was maybe my favorite pack-in title ever for a video game console, but this game is cute, wonderful, and overall just so fun.
The game is a 3D platformer with stellar level design, bright and vibrant colors, and it makes use of the console's DualSense 5 in so many creative ways. Whether it be the microphone, the adaptive triggers, motion controls, and so on, they are actually implemented well in terms of game design, and it's probably the best way that those mechanics could work. My favorite part of this game, though, has to be how it's just an homage to PlayStation as a whole. The collectibles you spend time unlocking and finding are references to a PlayStation museum that you fill up. Throughout levels, there are several references to classic PlayStation titles like Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper, Ape Escape, Infamous, Resistance, and even MLB The Show and Flower have references. That being said, if you know someone with a PS5 or you can find one, definitely just take your time to enjoy this short little gem of a game. I highly recommend it. Parting its way on the list at the 51st spot is Hudson Soft's 2007 release, Mario Party 8. This was the game that I got for my Wii on my 8th birthday, and god did I spend several months playing this, Wii Sports and Guitar Hero 3. This was my first Mario Party, but to this day, I still enjoy all the maps, minigames, and even the amount of motion control in it. Honestly, it was such a fun game, even with just 2 people. It's a good way to spend an afternoon or evening. If you haven't played it, I highly recommend it. It's still one of the most fun multiplayer experiences out there. The game has some of my favorite maps and minigames overall, and it just feels super at home on the Wii, almost more than any other title. Sure, there are tons of other little side quests and little things for you to collect, but the main board game mode and story and with multiplayer is the main reason you're here. Mining its way onto the list, the number 50 spot is Relogic's 2011 release, Terraria. The best way to describe Terraria is that it's like a 2D version of Minecraft, except it's so much more than that. The game is filled to the brim with a lot of different items, weapons, enemies, and areas for you to explore. I'm sure I'm even a bit out of touch with how the game is currently, but I still can't get over how much more depth there is than Minecraft. It even has some pretty incredible boss battles as well. Additionally, it has a wonderful 16-bit charm of any great SNES game. The soundtrack itself is also simply fantastic, and is worth a listen on its own if you enjoy any chiptune-inspired sort of music. It's a game that's so fun that in high school, me and my friend had sleepovers where we would stay up until the sun came out by accident. I can't recommend it enough.
Wrenching its way onto the 49th spot of the list is Insomniac Games' 2014 reboot of Ratchet & Clank. While it is different from the original, it's honestly a better version of the game. Even if the story is told differently and stripped of its identity, the game plays a lot better and maintains the same charm of the universe. It honestly meant so much to me to see a lot of those same original levels were back in the game, and they were treated with such care when they were reintroduced. However, a lot of the parts that replaced some of the original parts are largely forgettable. That being said, it was a game that I loved enough to complete, as it has the traditional loop of the rest of the series. Kill everything, level up weapons, enjoy the fun story, redo on challenge mode, more levels, more weapons, higher difficulty. Just do yourself a favor and play through this game. Even if you've never played Ratchet & Clank, it's worth your time. Even if it's not the best game in the series, it can serve as an easy introduction to the franchise for anyone. Snowboarding its way onto the list at the 48th spot, we have the wonderfully stylistic 2001 title from EA, Big, SSX Tricky. This is by far and away one of the best and most stylized sports games that I've ever played in my entire life. This is one of the first games I remember playing as a kid, and it formed a lot of my musical taste, including my affinity for Run DMC, my general foray into hip-hop as a whole, and whatever the fuck strange electronica, funk, big beat sort of shit this is. It's incredible. When it comes to the gameplay, there's a race mode, which is obviously racing, then there's show off, which is about tricks and getting giant snowflakes to multiply your jumps. The game also incentivizes you doing tricks and races to fill your tricky meter, which gives you a speed boost. Nailing an uber trick gives you a letter, getting all 6 gives you infinite speed boost. Go ahead and play it right now. It's amazing. I promise this game will not let you down. It's fucking awesome. Rambling its way to the 47th spot on the list is Rareware's Donkey Kong Country. I had originally played this game on the Game Boy Advance, but all versions of this game are valid as it's truly a classic Super Nintendo title. Originally released in 1994, this game was an instant classic as copies flew off the shelves, selling 500,000 in a week and 1 million the following week, and eventually selling over 9.3 million copies on the SNES alone, and becoming the 3rd best-selling title for the console. Everything about this game is just damn near perfect. The graphics for the time were super great. The music, the level design, just the general gameplay, and the splendid world design, both in levels and that overworld map, are just amazing. This game is an absolute blast and is worth anyone's time. Please do yourself a favor and go play this game immediately. Catching the 46th spot on the list is Pokemon Fire Red. This is a remake of the original, but with more updated graphics and taking mechanics from the Gen 3 Pokemon games on the Game Boy Advance. I'm aware of my bias in that I'm choosing the Gen 1 Pokemon, but this is the first Pokemon game that I ever played. I remember trading with Link cables at school. I remember leveling up my Charmeleon and evolving it into a Charizard in my 2nd grade classroom. It's a wonderful, fantastic JRPG that simply captures the wonderful sense of discovery and adventure, and I think that's something that Pokemon still does to this very day with every single iteration. It's the most approachable and easy to play JRPG. It's a bit of a collectathon. Everything about it is just sheer joy, filled with tons of creative designs. I really just can't say enough about this game. Racing its way onto the list at the 45th spot is the GameCube classic Mario Kart Double Dash. Double Dash earns its spot for a myriad of reasons, including its ability to have 2 players in each cart, having special items for each pair of characters, letting people play in the same cart or separate. This factor alone makes it the most unique Mario Kart to this day, let alone at the time. Additionally, the track design, the music, and just generally tweaking of controls makes it such a fun experience. If you haven't spent days with your friends and family playing this game, then I highly recommend it, as it can lead to some insanely fun times. Everyone knows that Mario Kart is fun, but this one in particular is certainly worth going back to. Exploring its way onto the 44th spot on the list is Sid Meier's Civilization 6. This is a game that I somehow have sunk hundreds of hours into, yet I have almost no real idea of what's happening. I usually win as I play on an easy difficulty, but I realize that most people have some sort of long-term plan or strategy, whereas I just kind of explore, go to war, and recruit, and try to just keep up as best as I can. The game is a turn-based strategy game, and it has skill trees for progress, and these can speed up or slow down depending on your actions. Thus, different societies arrive at different technological inventions and advancements at different times. The objective in this turn-based strategy game is to win by destroying all other countries, achieving a great feat of science, spreading your religion, spreading your culture, or just getting a higher score. Then there's also a diplomacy win that was added in the Gathering Storm DLC. If you just vaguely like history and turn-based games, I recommend it. It's a game that feels unique in terms of what I normally play, and it's entirely outside of my comfort zone, but that's what makes learning the title so much fun. Kicking its way up to the 43rd spot on the list is Next Level Games' 2007 Wii title, Mario Strikers Charged. This is another one of the greatest sports games of all time. What really sets it above is its gameplay and the charge strikes that are involved. Charge strikes allow players to bombard their opponents with several shots in quick succession. If the reaction time isn't quick enough, a score can be ran up pretty quickly. Additionally, it wouldn't be a Wii game without motion controls, but to be honest, I don't mind them here as they're implemented very well. The main attraction in my opinion is the multiplayer, but Nintendo does a great job of making unlockables the main driving force behind a lot of their games, so this game is no exception. The single player campaign has you running through cup mode, in which you battle your way through harder and harder challenges, needing to win games consistently and ultimately championships. Along the way, you'll unlock new characters and stadiums to compete in, many with their own catches and gimmicks. I also love how you pick teams with designated leaders and supporting characters. I still highly recommend going back to play this game, especially with a friend. It's a blast. Taking over the 42nd spot on the list is Pandemic Studios' 2005 hit release, Star Wars Battlefront 2. This is without a doubt one of my favorite games, one of my most comfortable games, and is something that I continue to play this day. To this day, there hasn't been a gameplay loop that is quite as satisfying as taking over command posts, defending, and retaking those bases, all being limited with the amount of troops you can have. Pair that with some truly iconic maps and locales, and a class-based system with vehicles and space battles, and you have one of the best games of a generation. This is undoubtedly influential to so many games that came after it. Even with its limited hardware and tech, it was able to make all the battles feel so large and truly captured my imagination as a kid. The whole experience features John Williams' iconic scores, memorable but repeated lines from soldiers. Oh, and Galactic Conquest is super dope. Overall, this game is an homage to both the originals and the prequels of Star Wars, and I absolutely love it. Dunking its way onto the list at the 41 spot is EA Canada's 2003 release, NBA Street Volume 2. This is actually one of the best sports games ever made. NBA Street Volume 2 features the best basketball gameplay that has ever graced gaming, period. You have a giant combination of tricks you can do, crazy dunks, stringing them together into combos to knock down and get around your opponents. This game adds so many little extremes and inconveniences in its design that just makes so much sense. The ball never goes out, and the only pass-ins are after scoring. There aren't any fouls, and you can power block and pull the ball out of the air, no goaltending. You can set hard picks and chain together alley-oops. This game is just absolutely insane. The same goes for the content that's within this game. Several iconic real-world courts, homages to street ball, showcases of former NBA players, and then the then-current roster of 2003. It even has a career mode for your custom character that you level up like an RPG. where you then unlock Street Legends, which are basically mini-bosses for the game. There's so much I want to say in this TikTok that I can't. Just go check it out, it's amazing. Coming in at the 40th spot is Rockstar's ever-presently relevant and re-released Grand Theft Auto 5. This game has sold over 160 million copies and will probably pass that by the time this comes out, again on next-gen systems since they're selling it for $10 for an upgrade. A fantastically well-written story, a fun-filled playground and new and lively settings based on Los Angeles, a lot of additional content since the online has been added. Listen, there's not a lot I can say about this game that hasn't already been said before. Personally, I just love being able to have a destructive world I can escape to sometimes. It's overly violent, it's ridiculous, and I love it for that. Want to go rob a store? Sure. Go to a strip club? Sure. Get on a cop chase? Yes. I'd recommend it, but everyone owns this game. You've all played it. Jumping and shooting its way onto the list is Capcom's certified NES classic Mega Man 2. This is by far and away my favorite Mega Man game. It's also one of my favorite 2D platformers ever. Mega Man 2 is a truly iconic game, everything from its character design, its level design, its soundtrack, and its incredible gameplay loop. The game basically has two mechanics, jump and shoot. With these core mechanics, you're able to beat the entire game. Each level is based around a boss. Once you beat the boss, you gain their powers. That power is more effective against another boss, and thus the gameplay loop ensues. There are many instances in which you'll realize some items are better for dealing with certain enemies in addition to the bosses. This game is just challenging enough to take a while to struggle through, but not so bad that you would ever have to give up. In fact, it's probably the easiest in the series, which makes it the perfect place to jump in. Fighting its way into the list at the 38th spot is Final Fantasy VII. The original PS1 game was released back in 1997. This JRPG classic follows the tale of a former soldier named Cloud, and a plot that's way too much to explain without spoiling it in a 60-second TikTok. But in short, he helps out some eco-terrorists that want to save the planet, things go wrong, he meets a cute girl, or two, and then he has to fight the super evil dude and everything gets way out of hand, and I'm not going to say much more because there is so much more that goes into this. The game was partially remade and is out, and I highly recommend to go play that version as well, although I haven't finished it and it's not going to be on the list. But do yourself a favor, go back and play the game. It's available on so many platforms, the story and the gameplay are fantastic if you like active turn-based JRPGs. Also, the music is incredible. Nobuo Uematsu really outdid himself there. Just go play the game. Even if it doesn't look the best visually, the gameplay still holds up really well, and I still think it's a really fun time. Gliding into the 37th spot on the list is Spyro the Dragon, another PlayStation 1 classic title. Developed by Insomniac Games and published by Universal Studios and released in 1998, Spyro the Dragon is a super basic and fun 3D platformer that follows our purple dragon protagonist Spyro as he has to save all the dragons as they've been turned into statues. The story isn't super relevant, to be honest. It's all about the gameplay, and there aren't a lot of games quite like Spyro. Sure, there are a lot of collectathon 3D platformers, but no control quite like Spyro. Additionally, the game's world has a strong sense of identity, and it's accompanied by some incredible music, produced by Stuart Copeland, the drummer from the band The Police. The game is very much still worth your time, and although new players, you might want to get the remastered version, I still recommend it. Crashing its way onto the list at the 36th spot is Naughty Dog's 1998 release, Crash Bandicoot Warped. This is another classic 3D platformer. Crash Bandicoot is an absolutely iconic character, and this is the third iteration in his series. I still believe this is the best of the original trilogy on the PlayStation 1, even though it may be somewhat repetitive in terms of level theme. I absolutely love the difficulty escalation, the type of levels, they're all fun, and the added time trials definitely make things replayable. Additionally, I love the boss fights in this game, and not to mention all of the time travel involved. Everything about this game is absolutely stellar. I highly recommend it to anyone who has any chance to play it, and much like the Spyro trilogy, has been remastered for current generation consoles and PC. Adventuring its way onto the list at the 35th spot is Nintendo's 1998 classic, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Often considered one of the greatest games of all time, Ocarina of Time is a must-play for anyone. Even though it hasn't aged the most gracefully, the adventure and the game's initial vision still lives on and is as strong as ever. Despite using an N64 controller, what is here is an incredible game telling a time-traveling adventure that is also a coming-of-age tale. The combat is fun and engaging, the world design and sound design are iconic, and so is Koji Kondo's wonderful score that accompanies one of gaming's greatest adventures. If you consider yourself a gamer, consider this required reading. Yes, it's old and it may not be your favorite game, but it is certainly an unforgettable experience that I highly recommend. Jumping onto the list at the 34th spot is the first video game I ever played, Super Mario World. Originally released in 1990, Super Mario World was the premier title for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. This is what I consider to be a perfect 2D platformer. Everything about this game, from its sprites to its music to its level design, is just absolutely stellar and top notch all the way around. To this day, whenever someone mentions Mario, hell, even video games, this is the first thing that comes to mind. It's truly one of the best games that I've ever played, and I can't recommend it enough. If you somehow still haven't played this game, literally just play it, man. It's absolutely perfect. Shooting its way into the 33rd spot on the list is Jaeger Development's 2012 release, Spec Ops: The Line. Spec Ops: The Line, in short, is a third-person cover-based shooter with maybe one of my favorite stories in all of gaming. The game follows a trio of US Delta Force soldiers into a sandstorm-destroyed Dubai. The rich escaped and the poor were left to die. The soldiers were sent to do reconnaissance for the United States to find out exactly what happened. What happens from there is every reason why you should play. In short, the game is about trauma, PTSD, and it portrays mental illness incredibly well with the weight and seriousness that such a topic should be handled with. It's a game with several decisions, multiple endings. Its length is about 6 or 7 hours, which makes the game super replayable. Overall, if you're looking for a narrative-driven title with a lasting impact, I highly recommend Spec Ops: The Line, as it is a game that will stick with you for the rest of your life, undoubtedly. Racing its way onto the list at the 32nd spot is Nintendo's Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on the Nintendo Switch. This is a game that I feel like everyone has played, but where do I even start? Surprisingly, when I think about this game, the first thing that comes to mind is the wonderfully jazzy soundtrack and its anti-gravity drifting. The game still has trick jumps, roosts, paragliding, and dual items that were used in Double Dash. This game is filled to the brim with wonderful and iconic tracks, some new and some classics from previous titles. The game has a wonderful art style and a great cast of characters. The initial DLC that were included in this game are fantastic, but what's even better are the 48 new tracks coming this year for just a $25 price tag. Overall, this is a fantastic game to play in general, but especially with friends, I can't recommend it enough. Do yourself a favor, cop this game immediately if you already haven't done so, and have the time of your life. Grappling its way onto the list at the 31 spot is Avalanche Studios' 2010 release Just Cause 2. Just Cause 2 is an absolutely absurdly large open world game. This game is either a completionist nightmare or wet dream depending on how you feel about absurd open world games. But honestly, most of the completion percentage is just blowing stuff up, which is always fun, then finding boxes and a few different challenges. But this game doesn't even expect you to complete it. You can get the platinum trophy without finding everything. The game has a wonderfully ridiculous story about overthrowing an authoritarian autocratic leader in Southeast Asia in a fictional country called Panau. It's an action-packed title that's the ultimate sandbox, or at least it was at the time, but it holds up so well. Even the traversal with the grappling hook and parachute is fantastic, and it's a standout feature of the game. The combat is simple and solid. At worst, it can be quick time heavy, but I honestly don't think that hinders the experience too much. Overall, I highly recommend this game, and it's just so incredibly slapped up. Sailing onto the list at the 20th spot is Ubisoft's 2014 release, Assassin's Creed Black Flag. To this very day, I still think this is the best pirate game out there. I'm going to be honest, I don't even think that I wanted to be a pirate, and all of a sudden I couldn't stop after nearly 100 hours. I love the ship combat, and it can be challenging at times, but it's also quite rewarding when you take down the legendary ships. Additionally, Haytham Kenway is one of the most lovable assassins since Ezio. His role as a pirate and assassin is absolutely fantastic, and it's honestly such a great balance and diversion from all the normal Assassin's Creed bullshit. Also, exploring sailing both land and sea fulfills this game with such a great, wonderful feeling of adventure that's damn near therapeutic until things get hairy. But do yourself a favor and play the ever-living hell out of this game. I can't recommend this enough. Time warping its way onto the list to the number 19 spot is Squaresoft's classic JRPG Chrono Trigger. This game is an epic science fiction and fantasy tale that deals with time traveling, branching past storylines, as well as featuring some fantastically written characters, many of which have iconic designs thanks to the work of Akira Toriyama, who is best known for his work on the Dragon Ball Z series. When it comes to gameplay, it's easy to compare this to a lot of its contemporaries, but this game's wonderful active turn-based battle system is just pure JRPG bliss. Exploring and navigating the world itself and its various venues is a fun endeavor. Hell, this game even has racing, and it's actually really good. I don't want to spoil a bit of this fantastic game for you, but just trust me and start playing it right away. Wandering its way onto the list at the 18th spot is Obsidian Entertainment's 2010 release Fallout New Vegas. Fallout New Vegas is by far and away the best Fallout title in my opinion. I love the setting of it being in Vegas, which brings together gambling in the Sin City setting to a post-nuclear and Old West style. I also love the faction system. So many of your choices affect your standings with different groups of people, and inversely, two groups are connected to each other. This game allows you to kill any character aligned with different groups, and truly work within the story of the game to allow multiple endings, courses of action. It's a truly fantastic game. That being said, so many of the factions are incredibly fascinating, and they have a wide variety of characters that make up all of them. Once again, I highly recommend going through Fallout New Vegas. It's an incredibly unique experience that is entirely based off the feeling of a Dungeons & Dragons campaign in a different setting. Cockfighting its way onto the list of the number 17 spot is United Front Games' 2012 release, Sleeping Dogs. The game follows the story of Wei Shen, a former San Francisco Police Department officer who has been taken into a gang, and while working undercover in his native country of Hong Kong, he has to balance his newfound loyalties to his gang as well as his loyalty to the police department. I don't want to spoil it for you, but what you get is absolutely incredible. In terms of gameplay, it's an open world game set in a city that is much more focused on being dense with things to do rather than just being large, so they try to add depth wherever it's possible. This includes sewers, neighborhoods, karaoke bars, restaurants, cockfighting, whatever. Combat-wise, this game has a branching tree RPG system that can help you expand martial arts combat system, similar to the Spider-Man or the Batman Arkham games, but it's a bit more grounded and so much more violent. Wei can be seen breaking knees, using blades, and using his environment to brutally execute his foes. There are so many reasons you should play this game, I just hope you enjoy it. I definitely did. Wrenching its way onto the list at the 16th spot is Insomniac Games' 2003 release, Ratchet & Clank Going Commando. To be honest, it's really hard to rate the Ratchet & Clank games that I love, but this one is probably the one where I can say that I truly fell in love with the game series. The game features so many of my favorite planets, my favorite plot twists, and it set the tone that created the formula for every game following. I love collecting bolts, the weapon variety, leveling them up, going into challenge mode. Some of my favorite additions to this game were the combat arena and the racing. I love the idea of adding puzzles, but they were admittedly what got me stuck as a child when I played them, and I will loathe them for the rest of my life for that. That being said, everything else that is there is some of the best gameplay that the PlayStation 2 has to offer, and the gameplay and writing are just as fresh today as they were back in 2003, and that's really saying something. This game is totally worth revisiting or playing through your first time if you've never even played a Ratchet & Clank game. It's fantastic, and I almost guarantee you'll fall in love. Anti-grabbing its way onto the list at the 15th spot is Nintendo's 2007 release Super Mario Galaxy. This is probably the most critically acclaimed 3D platformer in existence. Selling over 12 million copies and having a 97 on Metacritic, it's safe to assume that I'm not alone in my high placement of this title. For those who don't know, the standout feature of this game is the 3D levels, changing gravity, perspectives to run around what feels like isolated 3D art dioramas, many with their own unique styles and concept. If you somehow haven't played this game, it's as fun as it is interesting, and it certainly is incredibly interesting. So do yourself a favor, take your time, enjoy this game, go explore all the different weird and wacky and fun levels, collect all the stars, unlock Luigi, do the whole thing. It's totally worth your time. Adventuring its way on the list at the 14th spot is Naughty Dog's 2011 release Uncharted 3: Drake's Deception. If there was a game that has set pieces and moments that live rent-free in my head when I daydream, this is it. While there is a bit of deliberation as to which Uncharted is better, 2 or 3, I could honestly swap them. But regardless, I love this game. What I love is how well it shows Nathan Drake's past, his relationship with Elena, and how they totally almost killed Sully, but just didn't. The game's flaws seem to come in with Cutter. He seems cool enough, but he's entirely random and underdeveloped. I also love this game's antagonist. That being said, this game is totally worth your time, and is a cinematic, action-packed, fun adventure. I still think it's one of the better experiences on the PlayStation 3, and you can still play it on both the PS4 and the PS5, so there's really no excuse not to play this. Tethering its way onto the list at the 13th spot is Insomniac Games' 2021 release, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. This revitalized a lot of interest in the series, myself included. I've talked about the affinity of several games in the franchise, but this game is really what brought it all back and culminated in a truly special experience. And to boot, they put it on PS5, which honestly feels so surreal with how far this series has come over the past 2 decades. It's got the gameplay and the characters that I love, with the added bonus of being the most technically impressive entry in the franchise thus far, and it pairs it with some of the best art direction as the game is popping with colors. I didn't even mention the musical score that this game has that makes it all the more better. And I know that I said it takes it back to what made the game series so good in the first place, but also it took the time to introduce wonderful new characters that I honestly love so much. If you haven't played it yet, and I know it's hard to find at PS5 right now, but definitely try to find a way to play this game. It's spectacular in my opinion. Hijacking the 12th spot on the list is Naughty Dog's 2000 release, Jak 2. This game has been ever present in my life and I absolutely love it. Was it because I struggled to beat it for years at a time? Yes. I literally only started playing it by around 2005, and I didn't beat it until I got it remastered on the PS3 in 2013. But regardless of how hard it is, it's a game that I try to replay every couple of years or so now. This game is one of the most nostalgic for me, and it gave me an affinity for science fiction in a lot of ways and formed my sense of humor thanks to Dexter. What I love most about this game is the gameplay variety. It's one of the best 3D platformers I've ever played, but it's also got a great driving, fantastic racing missions, incredibly fun hoverboard. That being said, I love the science fiction, dystopian, cyberpunk-inspired authoritarian hellhole that this game takes place in. The world is just rife with politics that I wish were somewhat explored more, but for a PS2 game, that's just fine. Overall, this game's story is probably one of the shining spots, which is amazing because it's also incredibly well designed. Sneaking its way onto the list is Sucker Punch's 2001 release, Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. This was one of the first video games that I ever owned, and it's still a fantastic title. Sly Cooper is my favorite video game character and is one of my favorite game series, period. While this game isn't quite as good as the other ones, the older I get, the more I appreciate the initial design of Sly and the crew and the vision that they had. This game feels a lot more like Crash Bandicoot than what the series morphs into, but what is here is a melding of genres. What this game pairs together is 3D platforming, a very healthy dosage of stealth influence. Sometimes you do have to fight, but it's okay because the basic combat and unique abilities and gadgets that you unlock along the way help you in your adventure. All of this to steal back what is yours and what was stolen from your parents when you were a child and people that killed them. The crew to assist you are your best friends from an orphanage. Sly and his gang must go to the 5 farthest corners of the earth just to get parts of a book. What unfolds and follows is so much more. Overall, this game sets the tone and the foundation of a series that becomes so much greater, and it still holds up and is totally worth your time today. Smashing its way on the list is HAL Laboratories' 2003 classic GameCube title, Super Smash Bros. Melee. This game, more than any other, has probably had the single biggest impact on my life. This is the game that has led me to making so many fantastic lifelong friends. Hell, it's the reason I have a PlayStation 5. So, thanks Kyle, aka Chef. All of those fun IRL things aside, it's so incredibly well designed. Smash Bros. Melee has a wonderful cast of characters, set of stages, art direction, soundtrack, and the best gameplay. While there has been contention, I want to say that Melee's hidden depth and absurd mechanics has led to some of the most interesting moments in all of esports and created one of gaming's best scenes, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Melee is truly a special game, and I don't think I can rightly distill it down in just 1 minute. So I highly recommend you go watch the documentary The Smash Brothers on YouTube, as well as Metagame if you have the time. Overall, Melee is still one of the best, most fun games, and it'd be stupid if I didn't recommend it. Stealing the number 9 spot on the list is Sucker Punch's 2005 release, Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves. This game builds on the second title of the series by taking the heist format and applying it to how you recruit characters. While this is great and it does lead to a very Ocean's 11 and GTA 5-esque climax at the end of the game, it doesn't have a lot of what makes the second game so special in my opinion. I do love the new characters and a lot of the new missions, but I do wish they were treated a lot more like Bentley, Murray, and Sly instead of just being used for a few missions here and there. But it is just so awesome to see all these characters interact and work towards a common goal, and to just have more options in the variety in missions. Additionally, this game has a lot of the upgrades that make it technically better than its predecessors and sequels, as they always improve in video games. The new gadgets, mission structures, and plot lines are great. This game holds up and it's truly a blast. I definitely love this game and recommend it. Piloting its way onto the 8th spot of the list is Insomniac Games' 2004 release, Ratchet & Clank Up Your Arsenal. It's the third title in the series and one of the best entries for sure. While you can argue that 2 or 3 is better, personally I pick 3. I much prefer the puzzles, the weapons, and the level design. I find that it's all more largely improved as a whole. I love the game's formation of the Q-Force, the new planets, and the idea of leading soldiers in a battle. Sure, these missions exist to make use of the multiplayer maps, but it's such a nice switch of a pace in the formula that we'd seen in the past couple titles. This game also gives Ratchet a new love interest, whose dad is just furry Bill Clinton and is actually the president.
My daughter tells me you're a man who's good with his hands, Ratchet.
Sir, I swear I...
And with its cast of old new characters, it could have served as a great finale, but fortunately, it wasn't a finale. In general, the attention to details and fan service within the game, like the ability to play as Jack or get your weapons from previous game if it's on your memory card, are just simply fantastic. I still strongly recommend this game to anyone. Roll jumping its way onto the list at the 7th spot is Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy. While this game now feels like such a departure from the rest of the series that it came to be, it's still the best 3D collectathon platformer that's ever existed. I'm sorry, Banjo-Kazooie enthusiasts, but this game is what does it for me. The wonderful characters, the bright colors, the entire open world with no loading screens, the power cells, the precursor orbs, and the overall level design are all absolutely fantastic.
I love every single thing in this game, from the way Jack walks on wooden planks to the way Daxter spins around, the final boss being a giant robot, the zoomer going through the lava tube. This game is a reflection of just pure childlike joy and wonder of exploring a world and a grand adventure in a way that just feels so natural. And that's why Jak and Daxter is still one of my favorite games of all time, and I really think every single person in the world should play this game. Fighting its way onto the list is Naughty Dog's 2013 release, The Last of Us. While this is probably one of the most critically acclaimed games in the past decade, and even though it comes from my favorite studio, I almost had zero intention of buying and or liking this game until I read reviews. I'm a bit of a big baby, and I especially was at the age of 13, and I didn't really like zombies or anything remotely scary. But in spite of that, it's one of the best games I've ever played. I love the found family dynamic of Joel and Ellie and how it plays out. Outside of that, Ellie serves as a literal and figurative sign of hope. She's a young girl who has not known what life was before the apocalypse, and she is still optimistic about her future. In addition, she is immune to the virus, so searching for her gives them hope for a possible antidote in the treatment of others. The game has a fantastic combat system and enemy. You never feel overpowered, and every single kill feels like it's earned and has weight to it. I love every aspect of this game, story, gameplay, design, it's all there. Can't recommend it enough. Still one of the best experiences that I'll truly never forget in gaming. Uncovering the 5th spot on the list is Naughty Dog's 2009 PlayStation 3 classic, Uncharted 2. It is or was what many consider to be the peak of the Uncharted series, and I tend to agree with that notion. This was the first game I played on PlayStation 3 when I got it in Christmas in 2009. The game sold me on what it was finally time to move on from my PS2 as a stubborn child that was entirely needless. Not that I was ever really against it, but if you want to talk about next-gen experience, Uncharted 2 at the time certainly would have been that. This game has immaculate set pieces, wonderfully and colorful environments, fantastic characters, and just overall the most memorable experience I've ever had in gaming. Drake and Sully are perfect, Elena and Chloe are great. I love the game's absurd twist of the treasure they've been searching for and the supernatural and corny things that happen and follow. Whatever you do, I can't recommend this game enough. It is just pure action bliss, and sometimes you just need that. Electrifying its way onto the 4th spot on the list is Sucker Punch's 2011 release, Infamous 2. The second entry follows Cole and Zeke to New Marais, which is ostensibly New Orleans. There, Cole must train to fight the Beast, an impending and looming threat that they encounter at the beginning of the game in Empire City. But by escaping, Cole must train to become strong enough to defeat it. This, of course, isn't the sole reason. New Marais itself is a wreck, and there are quite a few characters for Cole to clean up, and new super-powered allies to make along the way. The game in both good and bad playthroughs provides an epic choice-filled story that is always worth your time and worth replaying, thanks to the game's excellent combat system that combines the melee combat via Cole's new weapon, the Amp, and the game's stellar third-person shooting mechanics. This game is entirely worth your time and is an absolute blast. Also, if you play the bad way, it will probably cry. I cried. Climbing its way onto the 3rd spot of the list is Nintendo's 2017 release, The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. This is it. This is one of the games that people say changed open world games forever. Now, whether or not that has happened, that's really still up for debate, but for me, it definitely embodies the concept of a sandbox game. A game where there's near limitless rules. Want to fight the universe's most powerful being under your underwear? Go for it. Want to shoot a rock across the world? Why not? Want to push a rock onto some mean monster boys? Sure, do that. This game is full of tons of problems, and it does such a good job of letting you solve them in such creative ways. A game where if you want to kill your opponents by chopping down a tree, you can. Is it the easiest or most practical thing? No, not at all, but it's possible, and that's just kind of the beauty of the game. There's no shortage of stuff to find and discover in this world. It's filled with wonderful quests and puzzles. The game is hundreds of hours of fun, and I can't recommend it enough. Just shy of the number 1 spot is the epic inclusion of Naughty Dog's PlayStation 2 Jak trilogy, Jak 3. Released in 2004, the game sees Jak exiled from Haven City by some incredibly powerful city council member, Vigor. Left to die in the sands, he is saved by the king of Spargus himself, Damus, thanks to the beacon that Ashlyn just gives him and tells him not to let go of. Essentially, Damus demands that they be productive members of society, but treats them terribly because clearly he doesn't know that these guys are the protagonists of the story at all. Needless to say, this ultimately leads you on an adventure that leads Jak to making new friends, helping old allies, and ultimately you uncover the secrets of the universe and to save the world as you know it. The game also adds 8 new weapons, new cars, a new version of familiar environments, and just an entire new environment altogether. I can't recommend this game enough as it's one of my favorites, but you should definitely start with the first game and play through the whole trilogy. It's a truly amazing experience. Finally, sneaking in and stealing the number 1 spot on my favorite game of all times list is Sly 2 Band of Thieves.
This game really ups the ante in terms of scope from its predecessor. It's basically Ocean's 11 with talking animals. What makes this game stand out is its truly fantastic narrative. Kevin Miller's Sly is now older and a bit more assured of himself. Chris Murphy takes Murray from a fat coward into a strong and powerful character who even refers to himself in the third person as the Murray. Matt Olson is still perfect for Bentley. He even gets a chance in the spotlight of this game with one of the single best character arcs I've ever seen in a video game. All of the bosses and villains are some of the most memorable in the entire series. The game is so intelligently designed with a fantastic formula for mission structure and archetypes that really allow the player to feel how varied the gameplay is, especially with 3 different characters to play as. The game is overall the most satisfying experience, and I will never forget the impact that it has left on me.